She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration.
75. King Charles.
Every crown comes with a price, and no one understands this better than King Charles III. For much of his life, he lived in the shadow of his duty, a duty that demanded sacrifice, patience, and loyalty above all else. As the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II, Charles grew up knowing that one day he would take on the greatest responsibility in the United Kingdom. Yet even after waiting more than 70 years for the throne, he did not inherit just a crown. He inherited a lifetime of secrets, heartbreak, and unspoken truths that had haunted the royal family for decades. At 75, King Charles finally found the courage to speak about one of those truths, one that reshaped how people saw him and the monarchy itself. His revelation wasn't about politics or tradition. It was about something far more human: love, regret, and the mistakes that even kings cannot escape. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth was admired for her dedication and unshakable sense of duty. She led through wars, family crises, and changing times with the same calm grace. But beneath the quiet dignity of the royal family, personal struggles often remained hidden. When the Queen passed away and Charles finally took the crown, he also took on the emotional legacy she left behind, a mixture of reverence, sorrow, and unspoken stories. For decades, rumors of royal scandals had captured the world's attention, but none more so than the story of Princess Diana, the woman who forever changed how the world viewed the monarchy. Princess Diana's story is one of love, pain, and enduring kindness. Born into an aristocratic family, she became a global icon, not just because she married a prince, but because she had the heart of a queen. When she stepped into the royal world, she brought warmth to an institution often seen as distant and formal. Her compassion for the poor, the sick, and the forgotten made her beloved across nations. Diana had a way of making everyone feel seen, from hugging children with HIV to comforting grieving families. Her soft-spoken nature and genuine smile turned her into the people's princess, a title she earned through love, not lineage. But behind her grace, Diana carried deep sadness. Her marriage to Prince Charles began with fairy tale expectations, but soon turned into a struggle of loneliness and heartbreak. When asked once if she thought she would ever be queen, she replied gently, "No, I don't think so. I'd like to be the queen of people's hearts." That one sentence told the world everything. She didn't crave power. She wanted love and meaning. Tragically, her life was cut short in 1997 in a car crash in Paris. Even decades later, her death still feels unreal to millions. Every year, people gather outside Kensington Palace with flowers and messages, proving that Diana's memory remains alive. She became more than a royal figure. She became a symbol of compassion, honesty, and humanity in a world that often forgets to be kind. For King Charles, the memory of Diana never faded. It followed him through every chapter of his life, from public appearances to private moments of reflection. The love the world had for her often turned into judgment against him. Many people saw Charles as the man who broke the heart of the people's princess, and that image stayed with him for years. Even as time passed and he found peace with Camilla, the woman who had long been part of his life, the ghost of Diana lingered. Every time he looked at his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, he saw Diana's smile and her kindness reflected in them. Despite his attempts to move forward, Charles carried silent guilt. The media and public continuously brought up Diana's story, demanding that he honor her openly. But he feared that speaking about the past might reopen old wounds, both his and the nation's. Still, deep down, he knew he couldn't keep quiet forever. To move forward as a man and as a king, he had to face the truth he had long avoided. His silence had become a wall between him and the people he served. The world saw a monarch, but rarely a human being behind the crown. That was about to change. When plans began for a special outdoor memorial to honor Princess Diana, King Charles knew it would not be like any royal ceremony before. It was meant to be personal and heartfelt, a tribute to a woman whose compassion had touched the world. Thousands gathered from every corner of the globe. Flowers filled the gardens, soft music played in the background, and photographs of Diana smiled from banners and candles. The atmosphere was heavy with emotion, but also full of love and remembrance. For Charles, it was more than a public event. It was an emotional crossroads. For weeks leading up to the memorial, he struggled with what to say. Should he continue to remain silent, or finally speak the truth about his past with Diana? Late at night, he would walk through his study, rehearsing words he might never say. Camilla watched quietly, knowing that this was something only he could face. He once told her, "If I don't speak from the heart, they'll never forgive me." This was not just about royal image. It was about closure. The world wanted honesty. Charles knew that the only way to find peace, for himself and for Diana's memory, was to open his heart before the nation. When the day arrived, the crowd fell silent as King Charles stepped onto the stage. Dressed simply, without the grand display of royal ceremony, he looked out at the thousands gathered in Diana's memory. His voice was calm, but his eyes carried years of pain and reflection. Then he began to speak. "There is something I have carried for too long," he said. "It has lived in the shadows, spoken by others, but never by me. Perhaps it is time I speak the truth." The audience waited in silence. What came next stunned everyone. "I never truly loved Diana the way a husband should," he continued softly. "I married her because it was expected of me. Duty left me little choice. And in doing so, I caused her pain, our son's pain, and myself pain." His words were not shouted, but they carried the weight of decades. He admitted that silence had only deepened the wounds between him and his family, and between the monarchy and the people. "I was taught to put the crown before everything else," he said, "but that belief has a cost. The cost of humanity." The confession left the world speechless. It was a moment of truth that broke royal tradition. For the first time, Charles had stripped away the walls of royal reserve and shown his human side. It wasn't a statement made for headlines, but a man confronting his regrets. To understand the depth of Charles's confession, one must go back to the beginning, the early 1980s, when the world fell in love with the idea of a perfect royal romance. Prince Charles was under enormous pressure to find a suitable bride. The media followed his every move, speculating about who would become the future queen. Then came Lady Diana Spencer, young, beautiful, and adored by the public. When their engagement was announced, it felt like a dream come true. The royal wedding in 1981 was watched by millions. The carriage, the gown, the kiss on the balcony, everything seemed to belong in a fairy tale. But behind the glamour, cracks had already begun to form. Charles's heart was still tied to another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles, a longtime friend and confidant. While Diana tried to adjust to her new royal life, she felt increasingly isolated. The palace was not a home filled with warmth, but a place of rules, expectations, and cold distance. Rumors about Charles's ongoing affection for Camilla reached Diana, deepening her feelings of insecurity and betrayal. The world saw the perfect royal couple, but inside the palace walls, their relationship was falling apart. Diana's loneliness grew so unbearable that she began recording her private thoughts and pain. These recordings later formed the basis for journalist Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story. In them, she spoke of her heartbreak, her struggles, and the emotional walls she faced. The fairy tale had ended, and the world began to see the truth behind the royal image. Diana's courage in sharing her truth changed everything. It opened the public's eyes to the pressures of royal life and the deep emotional cost it demanded. Charles, too, found himself at the center of global criticism. The world judged him harshly, often without understanding the personal struggles he faced as a man torn between duty and desire. But as time passed, Charles's relationship with Camilla slowly became accepted. Though it would never erase the past, he found peace with her. But he could never fully escape the shadow of Diana. For years, Charles avoided speaking about his first marriage in detail. He focused on his royal duties, his charitable projects, and the future of the monarchy. But deep inside, he knew that silence wasn't healing. It was hiding. His public confession during Diana's memorial wasn't meant to seek forgiveness from the world. It was to release the burden he had carried for most of his life. For the first time, he admitted what everyone had long suspected, that his marriage to Diana had been more about expectation than affection, more about duty than destiny. And in acknowledging that, he reminded the world that even kings are capable of heartbreak and error. After the memorial, reactions were mixed. Some praised King Charles for his honesty and bravery, while others believed the confession had come too late. But one thing was certain. The moment changed the image of the monarchy forever. People saw not a distant ruler, but a man who could admit his flaws. The day King Charles spoke about his truth, the world reacted instantly. News networks played his words on repeat. Newspapers printed emotional headlines, and social media filled with discussions about what his admission truly meant. For some, it was shocking. How could a royal, especially a king, speak so openly about love, regret, and failure? For others, it was long overdue. Many felt his honesty brought a sense of healing, even if it came after so many years of silence. People who had once seen Charles only as a symbol of formality began to see him as human, flawed, emotional, and capable of remorse. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was heavy but strangely peaceful. Those who had worked with Charles for years said it was the first time they had seen him so open and unguarded. For decades, his emotions had been hidden behind royal protocol. Every public appearance was carefully planned, every word chosen with caution. But now, after that confession, there was a lightness about him. The kind that comes only after years of carrying a secret. Even though the speech stirred controversy, Charles seemed calmer, as if finally free from the weight that had haunted him for decades. He had spoken not as a king addressing his subjects, but as a man speaking to a world that once judged him harshly. Within the royal family, Charles's confession brought mixed feelings. Prince William, known for his composure, reportedly felt torn. On one hand, he understood the need for his father to finally speak the truth. On the other, he worried about reopening wounds that he and his brother had spent years trying to heal. For William, Diana wasn't just a public figure. She was his mother, the woman who comforted him, laughed with him, and shielded him from the pressures of palace life. Hearing his father admit the emotional distance that had defined their family was painful, but also strangely healing. It allowed him to see his father not as the man who hurt his mother, but as someone who had finally accepted his mistakes. Prince Harry's reaction was more emotional. Living far from the royal family in America, Harry had long spoken about the pain of losing his mother and the challenges of growing up in the royal spotlight. When Charles's confession became public, Harry remained silent at first. But close friends later said that he appreciated the honesty. It didn't erase the past, but it acknowledged something he had always known. That love inside the palace had often been overshadowed by duty and image. For both William and Harry, the confession reopened memories, but it also gave them a sense of closure they had quietly needed for years. Camilla, now queen consort, faced her own share of attention. For years she had been unfairly labeled the other woman, a title that followed her even after decades of marriage to Charles. But after the confession, public opinion shifted slightly. People began to see her not as the villain in a royal love triangle, but as the woman who helped Charles find peace in his later life. Camilla's quiet strength and loyalty played a major role in helping him face the past. She knew that his words would cause backlash, but she also knew he needed to say them. Her support behind the scenes allowed Charles to show the world a side of himself that had long been hidden. Not a prince bound by expectation, but a man longing for redemption. The confession also changed how the public viewed the monarchy. For generations, the royal family had been seen as distant and untouchable, figures of tradition rather than emotion. But Charles's words broke that image in the most human way possible. It showed that even the royal family struggles with heartbreak, regret, and forgiveness, just like ordinary people. Many citizens wrote letters of support to the palace, expressing admiration for the king's courage to speak about his mistakes. "For once, we saw a man, not a monarch," one message read. Another person wrote, "Diana taught us how to feel, and Charles finally showed us that he can too." Of course, not everyone was forgiving. Some critics argued that his confession came too late, that Diana deserved those words when she was alive. Others felt that the royal family's openness was damaging to the institution itself. They believed the monarchy's strength came from mystery and distance, not emotion. But even among critics, there was recognition that Charles had done something unprecedented. He had made the monarchy feel real again. His vulnerability reminded the world that beneath the royal crowns are human hearts, imperfect, but capable of growth and truth. To understand why Charles's confession mattered so much, one must understand the burden of silence that defined his early life. From the moment he was born, every step, every word, and every decision was watched by the world. His childhood was shaped by duty, not freedom. His mother, Queen Elizabeth II, loved her children deeply, but was bound by the demands of her role. Public service came before personal comfort, and emotions were often left unspoken. Charles learned to hide his feelings, to appear calm even when he was hurting. When he married Diana, that same silence followed him. He struggled to express affection, not because he didn't care, but because he had never been taught how to. The pressures of royal life demanded perfection. A smiling couple, a happy family, a flawless image. But behind closed doors, the emotional distance grew wider. Diana, open and sensitive, needed love and warmth. Charles, reserved and conflicted, could not give her what she craved most. Their love story became a quiet tragedy. Two people brought together by duty, separated by unspoken pain. The public saw a fairy tale, but the reality was far more complicated. Years after Diana's death, that silence still haunted him. Every mention of her name reminded him of what he had lost. Not just